Hi everyone, Spamthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and right now begins our 2014 Classics Week!
Yeah! Woo!
Where I'm going to be reviewing a series of classic records all week this week, talking about some amazing personal faves of mine that I think are incredibly important and essential and influential when it comes to modern music. And with this year's installation of Classics Week, we're going to be talking about Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures.
Total classic. Good classic right there.
I agree.
#1 shirt. The best shirt ever.
This is not just a t-shirt.
Of course it's a shirt. Best shirt ever. I seen it.
The year is 1979, and one of the many amazing albums to drop would be the debut full-length LP from English rock band Joy Division. The band formed several years earlier, and they were inspired by the growing punk movement in England. And even though they were pulling musical ideas directly from punk, they weren't technically making straight punk music. Joy Division was way more tortured and depressing and indirect than a group like the Ramones. But they still pulled a lot from punk music's simplicity and raw emotion, as was the case for many other bands around this time who were also fusing punk music with other blossoming genres like experimental rock and art rock and dub, krautrock, disco, and funk, which is why many people over the years have dubbed such bands as being a post-punk. Seeing punk's limitations, punk music godfathers like John Lydon of the Sex Pistols would even go on to dabble in this genre with Public Image Limited. Now, the release of Unknown Pleasures in 1979 had been preceded by some compilation features from Joy Division, but their first significant musical release was a 1978 EP titled An Ideal for Living. At this point, Joy Division had settled on their name, but hadn't quite honed their trademark style. The music on this EP was pretty much just straightforward punk rock, with the exception of one track that does seem a little moodier than the other songs in the track listing here. The most notable thing about this EP really is its controversial cover art that features a Hitler Youth banging on a drum on the front. Nevertheless, this EP is an important starting point for the band in that it caught the attention of TV host and nightclub owner Tony Wilson. At this point, he had been working in television for quite some time, had put in quite a bit of effort covering the art scene in Manchester, and being impressed with groups like Joy Division, he would go on to co-found Factory Records, one of the most significant independent labels to come out of England ever. He would co-found this label with these four gents, the last of which here, Martin Hannett, would go on to record and produce Joy Division's full-length debut album here, Unknown Pleasures. Unknown Pleasures, in my opinion, is Joy Division at their very brief but important artistic peak. A peak that was brought down pretty abruptly due to Ian Curtis's decline in physical and mental health, and the band's sophomore album, Closer, an album that does get quite a bit of praise that it deserves, but an album that I don't enjoy quite as much as Unknown Pleasures. Instrumentally, this record is a little more experimental and ambitious in comparison with its predecessor, but Ian Curtis's bellowing vocals don't really complement the poppier moments on this record that much, in my opinion, and Closer doesn't really capture that same haunting, chilling atmosphere that Unknown Pleasures does. Unlike Closer and many other albums that have been written and recorded, Unknown Pleasures is a totally immersive experience. The music, the lyrics, everything that goes into making this album just lives in a sonic world of its own. And that's all thanks to the really eerie synthesizers, the very minimal, simple, and distant drums, the strung out guitars, the driving bass, and some of the most urgent and stirring vocal performances on any rock record ever. Martin Hannett's very liberal use of reverb all over this album leaves Joy Division feeling like a band playing during its final moments at the bottom of a well, like some kind of proto-goth funeral march. A lot of the songs on Unknown Pleasures are essentially the sound of impending doom. Few albums successfully translate a sense of dread in the way that Unknown Pleasures does. And like many other post-punk records, Joy Division finds ways to take things that would normally be poppy or maybe mainstream and just kind of subvert them a little bit, like on the opening track here, Disorder, which has a dance beat. But the vocals, the lyrics, and the phantom sounds hanging in the background throughout much of the mix here tell a different story. The story of someone wanting normality, reality, but some kind of disorder or something ripping any hope of that away. Ian Curtis also talking about this disorder taking away sensation and feeling. In my opinion, it's very fitting that this song opens up with the idea of a guide taking the protagonist or even the listener by the hand to carry him or her through this world that they are about to experience on this record. Lyrically, throughout this record, Ian Curtis deals with traumatic memories, feeling trapped in his own mental state, and at one point even coming to terms with death. Just totally accepting that the end is near. But there are also moments on the record here where it seems that Ian is doing his best to struggle past that. Given the lyrical content of this record and Ian Curtis's unfortunate suicide, there's a lot that you can read into on this record, and Joy Division's next LP too. But there's a lot to dive into musically on this album as well. Sonically, Unknown Pleasures might seem kind of lightweight to your ears, especially in a world of loudness wars and dubstep drops. But the gratification that comes with this album is more cerebral than it is physical or visceral. This album comes on slow. It's a slow burner. It's a record that is really going to touch you emotionally than it is going to tap into some kind of primal urges to move your body to some kind of hard-hitting groove. Listen to the really epic, slow pacing and mournful guitar leads on the song New Dawn Fades, or the song Candidate, which is just a really slow rock tune just hanging in the background while Ian Curtis delivers some really chilling poetry over it. Or the very scary stillness of the instrumentation on the song Insight, or She's Lost Control, which has this really weird tss piece of percussion that makes this song stick out past any other in the track listing because of just how strange and just cavernous a lot of the instrumentation sounds here. With the song Shadowplay, Joy Division comes dangerously close to sounding legitimately catchy, with some spotlighted guitar soloing and Ian Curtis's vocal delivery sounding just a little fiercer than usual on the rest of this album. This track, unlike some of the others on here, has kind of a new wave vibe to it, like a song I would be hearing maybe 2 or 4 years down the road, but with Martin Hannett's very icy production style, it feels very much a part of this record. The song Interzone is a nice straightforward piece of punk rock with some overdubbed vocals, it feels like, and without the reverb, it would have fit pretty nicely onto that EP that Joy Division put out before this record. And as far as the closing track on this album goes, it is just such a show of bleakness, it makes the rest of the album here seem upbeat by comparison. There's a gloomy bass guitar on this track, some really weird air bursts like as well as some broken glass. Joy Division was making some pretty dramatic music here, but the recording matches that drama really well with these additional strange sound effects and reverby post-production. I don't really think there's too much else you can say about this album. Other than that, it's just a collection of rock songs on a record that all happen to be really great, that are all in a similar aesthetic and share a similar mood, and feature some recurring themes in the lyrics. Some albums out there really shoot for the stars, and they hit a bullseye, they hit target, and they impress people for generations to come. But Unknown Pleasures is different in that it's so unassuming in a lot of ways. It's an album that hit upon greatness while wallowing in the deepest lows of human sorrow. This record might seem a little less novel with so many bands out there being utterly addicted to reverb and not really using it to enhance their sound but cover up what is so uninteresting about their recordings. Plus, there are so many popular underground groups out there right now that pull very directly from Joy Division's ideas on this record and Closer. Still, even with this saturation and blatant copycatting going on today, I think Unknown Pleasures is still an incredibly moving, intriguing, influential, and significant record, and just had to review it for Classics Week. And that's it. I love this album. I hope you do too. If you haven't heard it yet, give it a listen. And yeah. Transition. You're the best. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best. You're the best. Forever.